I'm Andrew with Investors Hub, and let's do our quick introductions, then we'll get right to the interview. So we're going to be talking with Mark Hake. He writes articles for InvestorPlace, for Seeking Alpha, and he's got a blog on Medium.com. And we're going to be talking to him about Bitcoin mining companies, and we're also going to hear his thoughts on cryptocurrency in general. Please note that our videos are not designed to be direct investing advice. We're here to gather the perspective of different investors. Our channel and our content should just be one stop on the journey of trying to find out where to put your money. So, Mark, you had some interesting companies in the Bitcoin mining industry that you wanted to share. Tell me about it.
I had previously written about these Bitcoin mining stocks, especially one Marathon Patent Group in InvestorPlace. At the time when I wrote about it, I felt like there was a big wedge between what it was valued at by the market and what its sum of the parts was. The stock was trading around 22, and if you added up the value of their Bitcoin mining, plus the fact that they had recently announced that they were, going to be buying Bitcoin. They were one of the first companies after MicroStrategy that had said they were going to be buying Bitcoin themselves with their treasury assets. But the problem is the stock has moved up dramatically since then. It's a problem, but I mean, what I'm saying now is that, look, it's going to correlate a lot more clearly with one-to-one with the price of Bitcoin, whereas before it would have correlated, but there was also an extra amount of return you could have made because of the fact that it was selling way below. Now, that could actually happen again. Let's say that they announce that they are going to be buying more Bitcoin. Right now, they only purchased 150 million, and they've got something like 450 million in cash, plus some other cash. And I'm waiting to actually see what their balance sheet looks like for the end of this quarter, to see how much actual Bitcoin they've purchased. If that's the case, then you've got a very high correlation. Right now, I estimate it's roughly between 20 and 30% of their valuation is based on their Bitcoin holdings. Nevertheless, since they're mining Bitcoin and they claim to be the largest Bitcoin mining company in the world right now, which I'm sure there's always a race going on. They're going to be becoming free cash flow positive if my numbers are correct, and that should, once that becomes very clear to the market, that could give the stock an even extra boost. However, for the time being, I think that Marathon Patent and some of these other ones like Riot and everything they are basically going to correlate one-to-one, maybe even more than one-to-one, like sort of like a beta, if you will. A high beta with the price of Bitcoin. So expect to see jumps amplify in, holding Marathon Patent and MicroStrategy and Riot and that kind of a thing. And also if Bitcoin falls, expect to see a greater fall in these kind of stocks. So I would say there's a greater than one-to-one beta correlation. Now, and I wanted to bring up this other thing. There's one other stock that I thought your viewers should take a look at. It's a brand new interest of mine in my own portfolio, just to give you a heads up on that. So Alt Global Holdings, the symbol is DPW, Dog Perry White. So Alt Global Holdings is a Las Vegas-based sort of, I call it a mini conglomerate. They claim they're now getting back into Bitcoin mining with the purchase of a number of servers and a brand new building that they're fitting out to do co-location services and their own Bitcoin mining up in Michigan. They also recently filed a $150 million at the market offering document, and they raised 50 million net, I think about 43 million in cash. They have other investments such as in an EV technology company, a defense company, and they've also been taking stakes, including recently announced yesterday a stake in another company called Silver Sun Technology. So it's run by an interesting family, the Alt family, and I find that this thing might end up getting, depending on their valuation, and I can't really come up with a good valuation at the present time because I don't know how profitable their Bitcoin mining is going to be. They had done this in the past and had lost a lot of money, but they claim now they have a new, much lower cost energy consumption agreement with the local utility. So take a look at that as a sort of nascent, if you will, Riot/Marathon patent. Alt Global Holdings, DPW.
So if someone was looking to evaluate Bitcoin mining stocks, what sorts of parameters would you look at?
I'd like to see what their energy consumption cost structure is, first of all. That's just about as important as anything else, because unless they're going to get a very low cost structure, some kind of sweetheart deal with a local utility, or else their own energy production capabilities, that's the first thing. Then you want to look at their their hash performance. There's various ratios you can look at that from different standpoints, how quickly they hash and what their cost structure is on that. Sometimes you have to dig through the notes as a public company to see how they're financing. The thing is, these servers, these ASIC servers, or ASIC machines that most of them use, application-specific integrated circuit, they've all moved away from CPU and GPU type mining. They're now using these ASICs, and you have to kind of look at how are they financing these new machines that they purchase, because every time you turn around, there's a new machine that's faster and more profitable than the previous. And so all of a sudden they've got a bunch of inventory that they, do they have an agreement they can swap that out for the latest machine, that kind of a thing. And they're always sort of leapfrogging each other in that regard. So, it turns out that the vast majority of Bitcoin miners are basically based in China. So to the extent that you can find one that's not, i.e. this Alt Global Holdings, it's, of a sort of industrial scale, then that's interesting. That's something worth looking at.
Any additional thoughts?
What is going to happen to, Bitcoin? What is going to happen to Ethereum? I've written some essays basically on my theories on Ethereum versus Bitcoin. That's in my blog, medium.com. My theory, or my essay, is basically saying that over the next 7 years, if past goes into the present, if the past performance of Ethereum continues, it'll take about 7 to 8 years, and one Ethereum will equal one Bitcoin. So in other words, whereas Ethereum costs about $1,800 now today versus Bitcoin around 51,000, because of the fact that Ethereum has had a significantly faster growth rate over the past 5 years, and frankly, over its own history compared to Bitcoin, they're both going up, and you'll see the charts I show in my Medium article. It'll take about 7 years, 7 to 8 years. But what that means is essentially that the owner of Ethereum right now will have a 22 times greater return than an owner of Bitcoin. Then I also written an article on Dogecoin. Believe it or not, this is actually quite an interesting crypto, because it's one of the very few, if not one of the only, that have an inflationary supply characteristic. And I've written an article about what that essentially means. Remember, Bitcoin is essentially going to have zero supply by the year 2140. And in fact, for all intents and purposes, most of the supply is used up right now. There's over 18 million Bitcoin that are in circulation. That means the whole world is only mining for about maybe even less than that, 3 million Bitcoin. There can only be 21 million Bitcoin. So essentially what you're talking about is a slow short squeeze, if you will, which is what's forcing up the price of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is essentially a hoarding asset. People are just simply hoarding it. They're not using it for transaction. I argue in my article about Dogecoin, they have a situation where they're issuing 5 billion Dogecoins per year as they're being mined. So you have a situation where the supply is constantly increasing. In fact, it will continue to increase. However, that supply will, as a percent of the previous totals, will go down and down and down. So it's a much lower and slower pace short squeeze, if you will, on the supply. In effect, it provides the velocity and the transaction velocity of money, if you will, for transactions to occur. So that's why I think Dogecoin could end up being quite an interesting crypto over the next 20, 30 years. And you can read about that in my article in medium.com, Mr. Hake, medium.com. And also, I've written an article about that in InvestorPlace.com.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter at ihub_vision, and I'll see you again soon.